our last meeting, there were conversations about the application process and that it was very difficult to actually get a public health associate. And so what I wanted to do today is to kind of go through some of the basic slides that the PHAP program has, but instead of just going through them and reading what they say, kind of talk in terms of what we actually see in the application process. And so I wanted to kind of give a commentary of like what things you need to actually have in your application around these components. I have found with all government that our application processes have these really lofty goals, but then in practice, there's always a whole level of subtext that's never said. And so today, quite honestly, I just want to kind of tell you about the subtext and explain kind of what we actually see for top-rated applications, so that as you're building your application this year, that you'll have those things. And so it's not a guessing game, because they do not provide guidance or follow-up if on rejected applications. So you never know why your application wasn't approved or what things you can do to improve those. And so today is really kind of to go through some of the slides that they have on the site, and I'll direct at the end of this presentation, I'll talk a little bit, I have those links so that you can go to them, and then kind of talk about what we really see in practice and going forward. And I teach biology as part-time. So if you have questions, I'm always glad to, please feel free to stop and ask, and we'll go through them, because that makes this far more interactive. Typically, if I'm in class, I would go around and sit by your chair and then ask you to ask me a question, but we can't do that, so I'll try the best I can. All right. So in case for those of you who do not know about the Public Health Associate Program, it is a 2-year on-the-job training program that is designed to provide the associate with experiential learning as an early career public health professional. And in a sense, and that really is the heart of what we want the public health applications to look like, is that we want you to take these young people that are, it's actually a wide variety of students now, both young and old, who are wanting to get into public health, and train them and think about it as you have the opportunity to train them in public health and use the best practices and train them to a place that you would want to hire them. And that's kind of the mission of this 2-year training program. This is a CDC funded program, meaning that we pay for the salary and fringe for this person. That the associate is actually a federal employee, and they have the opportunity to apply for a federal position at the end of their 2-year fellowship and coming in as a GS-9, but also a lot of organizations use this as a way of training that person so that they are then able to apply within that, whether it's state, local, or tribal area, for a position within their own field, within their own department. And so this is a 2-year funded program from the CDC. And in terms of eligibility, both state, tribal, local, territorial health departments, but we also expanded it to non-governmental organizations. Recently, we've included now academic institutions are allowed to apply also. So it's a wide host of different host sites that are able to apply for PHAP programs. And you should think of this as a PHAP cost, with fringe, probably it's like a $70,000 per year. So this is like, I like to tell people, when you're planning this application, think of it as a $140,000 application process that you're applying for, because that's essentially what you're getting. You're getting an associate that has access to all the CDC resources, and you're part of that training. But that's about the dollar amount that we're talking about when we pull these in, when you're applying. So that's the kind of the level of information that you should be providing in terms of the detail. This is the life cycle, and I thought this was really important. So the reason that this is an ideal time to be applying is that this is the time that you need to be building your application. The phase 1 in January of 2018, we're in 17 now, that will be when the application process starts for both the candidates and for the host sites. And it is literally only a 2-week process. We have, in terms of associates applying, we have now in that 2-week period, they will get approximately 4,000 applications. So it is a hugely competitive process. And so as you can imagine, while we take candidates that are they have to have a bachelor's degree or above, because of the limited time, of course, what's happening as the job market has become tight to get into government processes, this is one of the only viable ways into government now, really. And so lots and lots of people are applying through here. So we have associates with master's degrees, with doctoral degrees. We hired one of our project officers here in our branch is a former PHAP, and she has a PhD from Harvard. We have one in DUIP. They also have a master's degree. So the level and quality of candidates that you would get typically are going to be from really top-notch schools, had some previous experience in some cases, but in some other cases, this could be their first job. Because of the short time limit, we want to make sure that you know to start planning that process now, to start working on your applications now so that you have the opportunity, so that when that 2-week period, you're not trying to scramble to put it together, because there are other programs that have already got public health associates and they apply for one every year. And they already know what the process is, and so they have already worked on this, and so they're regenerating what they've already been successful with. And so we want to make sure that you're planning it now, start September, October, November, to work on that application so that really in January you're just submitting. And phase 2 is the objective review. That is conducted within the PHAP program, meaning that the CIOs or the divisions and centers have nothing to do with that part. And so before we even see your applications, that is where the major cuts happen. And so that is where we're seeing for injury specific applications about a 60% cut. And so of all the applications that are submitted, we receive about 40% of those from objective review, meaning they don't make it out of the objective review process. And so today, my goal is to help, hopefully for this region, increase the penetration so that we're actually seeing your applications, because we can't even recommend you for a PHAP if we don't get to see your application. So this is the gatekeeper phase. And so today's talk is designed around helping you get through that phase. Any questions?
So is the rate of for injury lower? Is that what you're saying, that the
Yes.
rate of pass through for injury, what does it look like for other areas, just out of curiosity?
Well, HIV and STD do a really good job. They have a much higher percentage rate. I think they're still at like a 60% penetration rate for their applications. And part of that is kind of I think some of the nature of where HIV is in terms of community interventions and community work just lends itself really well and nicely to PHAPs, so they're not just in an office. I think our injury work does too. We just need to make sure that we're framing it in a similar fashion so that it makes sense to these objective reviewers within the PHAP program. That was a great question. Any other questions from anyone? All right. After the objective review process, we go to the CIO, and so that is where it is actually ranked by SMEs within the center. And I will tell you, because I'm allowed to, there is a SME from DVP, Division of Violence Prevention, an SME from DUIP, and an SME from Chorus BIP. And it's usually me for that part. And I will tell you, one of the things that has been a really big issue is that the SMEs they get to rank their positions too. So many times our applications are written like a core application, and they really shouldn't be, because we're wanting we'll talk a little bit about being topic specific. So we're not wanting you to be, these applications or these subject matters have to be on one specific topic. And so that will increase your ability to get through both the objective review and to be higher ranked. And so as you're thinking about your process, making sure that if you choose either a topic within DUIP or DVP, that it is one topic. If you choose something from the core, it has to be something that is still one of those strategies that we're looking at, not necessarily like motor vehicle or child abuse and neglect, not a cross-cutting, unfortunately, at this time. And so but this is the life cycle. And then after they're ranked, there's a matching process between what was on the applications for the candidate and what's where the host site is, and then there's a matching process that takes place, and then they're notified, and then they start in October. And so that is the basic life cycle. And so we are now in the planning, preparation, and recruitment phase. And so we're hoping to help you with that process. And again, in terms of the roles of the host site, and these slides, I have to go back and point out, these slides are a compilation of 2 of the trainings that are webinars that are available on the PHAP site, and I'll give you that link at the end. And so what I did is I wanted to take those slides and again provide a commentary of what that means in terms of on the application. And so from the slides, they talk about that this is a value-added service, and really what we're wanting to see on the applications is that the associate is seen as both an integral part of your program, and they have a wide breadth of responsibilities. And we want them to, at the end of the program, be able to apply and say that they have 2 years of experience in public health in a particular topic. And these can be traditional, but it can also be around accreditation or like our community implementation groups. Those are a good place also for them. Local emergency response efforts around either PDO or other kinds of activities where it's a response activity. Those are all great activities to add.
I think somebody is unmuted. If you could please mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. And in terms of what the host site is responsible for, you are responsible for the associate's local travel and training costs and workspace, telephone, internet access, computer. This sounds like a small detail. Make sure that on your application that you indicate that that associate has a place to sit, like a computer workspace. I know it sounds silly, but there are some associates, some places that don't put that, and so we have no idea where they're sitting, if they have a spot, and so that is another place that they use to ding applications. All right, this is the big one. This is, I've looked at a couple of failed objective reviews, and so these are the competency domains that you must have in your application. I've listed at the bottom a link. And so within each of the competencies as you're building your training plan has to cover one of these sections. And you should have, and I have a summary slide, but you should have at least 2 of these competencies for each major activity. And so, and there's a checklist, and it's the link that's provided right here. I don't know if I click it, will it take me there? It'll take me there. Awesome. Great. So these are the major competencies. And so you'll want to have from in each one of those at least 2 from each major category at a minimum in order to make it past the objective review from what we've seen from the failed slides. Someone, I can hear a vacuum cleaner or something.
Hi, can everybody just please mute themselves? We're hearing a little bit of feedback from somebody's phone. That would be great. Thank you.
All right. And then the big, this is the next part is the CoStar model. And I'm not going to go through all of these. There is a PHAP training 201. That goes through the in-depth in the CoStar. What I did is try to edit those slides so that they're more related to injury and injury prevention. So when you're building your application, it's based upon a competency work plan, opportunities for advancement, supervisor involvement, training, education, that it aligns with your program goals and is realistic and robust. And what we're going to do for the remainder of my talk is really talk through what this means on your application. So the first one is that they believe in a see, do, teach approach. And what that means is that for each of your major activities, you need to have an opportunity for that associate to be both to see those, be a team member, to be either a coordinator or an outreach prevention manager, and then have an ability for that associate to actually have some ability to teach others, whether it's at a classroom with other health educators, but we want to really see that there is a see, do, teach approach in your plan. And it should not only be observation, and some examples around injury prevention work, which is a weird dash right there, is the development of the violence prevention framework model, the creation of the prescription drug campaign, but it can also collect and manage statistics and trends, and educate local populations on home and recreational safety. And the work plan should be progressive, meaning that there should be activities that build upon each other. And so what I did here is give you an example of a typical work plan using something from our own FOAs. So they may implement a survey around traumatic brain injury, and they would assist in the data analysis. Then they may interview contacts in the next part or next quarter or phase of their education, and that would be assist the supervisor in managing the local TBI prevention efforts. Conduct direct observed therapy or assist TBI manager to identify barriers or care. So whether it's return to learn or one of those, any of those kinds of interventions. And finally, help conduct school curriculum assessments. And then in that one, they would interact directly with the health educators. And so this is an example of increasing the level of complexity that's involved in those activities, and then also the level of responsibility. Any questions on that? And I can, at the end of the talk, we can talk a little bit about what that looks like on the actual application, and why this is the place where we see the biggest or widest variance between programs that have done this before and been successful and programs that are trying it putting their application in for the first time. And so this will be where we can really help you. And you're allowed, I did check, and so as you're building your applications, if you want to send those to me, you are allowed to do that, and I'm allowed to just provide feedback. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not a part of the objective review, but I can certainly talk about what I see on once those applications that reach the CIO review process.
So this is Carol. Is there any advantage to health departments connecting with academic institutions, whether injury centers or other kinds of groups, as part of the training plan for the folks coming through?
Oh yes, and when there's actually in the CoStar model, the training and education, it is going to be super important that you have a wide variety of training opportunities for the associate. And one of those can be, especially if you have topic-specific webinars or seminars at the ICRCs that the associate could attend. Yes, those are exactly the kinds of things that would be included as part of this plan, so that the associate knows that when they're there for those 2 years, they're going to have a certain amount of, whether it's classroom or lecture or web-based interactions, and the Injury Center would actually be an excellent resource for the region to use. If you've already, and I'm assuming you all have already developed your seminar calendar for the year, for the upcoming academic year, if those were included as part of the training plan, that would be an awesome piece to the application.
Yeah, so for our region, I mean, I think that's for the folks in the health departments listening today or who are watching this on video. I think, working with me and with Corey Piquesa at Iowa's ICRC, we can help you think of opportunities long distance as well as, depending on where you are, coming to things that would make that more appealing.
Are any of you planning on applying for the PHAP program? This is where it's classroom participation. I just want to check in and have everybody unmute and say yes or no or something. Mandy, are you? Go ahead, Mandy.
Yep. Okay. We have applied 2 years previously and have made it like all the way to the end, or the last phase. And then, so we're assuming that we just weren't selected, like PHAP chose not to come to North Dakota just because of where it was, but we don't know for sure. But we've made it, you know, although like they notified us that we've moved on to the next step, and then we moved on to the next step, and then they said we weren't selected. So we're not sure yet if we'll apply again.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Another thing that we do recommend, especially for those of you who are in more rural areas, is if you have a local university that has a public health program, to send the announcement to that area, because students want to work close to home a lot of places. And so having students apply from within your region is also helpful, because you know, it's kind of like this idea of the brain drain, right? So you want to keep the talent within your state. And so sometimes a lot of, especially the further away you get from the CDC, I feel, there's a lot of schools that don't even know that this is available. And so we really want those master level students or those students who finish their public health degree in your states, this is a great opportunity to get them to apply, because then you also increase that, you know, the idea that or chance that they want to match within the area that they've already been living for the last 4 years. So that's another great pickup for.
And I want to build on what Jamie and Carol have both said in that as far as the injury programs that Carol leads, that I lead, it's really an advantage to us to have students in public health departments doing injury work. So I know that we both, you know, as well as Lenora Olson in Utah, would be really happy to facilitate an application where we would collaborate with the public health department for the student to be doing injury work in the state health department. That's almost, because we have a lot of internship programs that are more academic, so it's almost better for us to have our students out in the health departments doing work. So we're very motivated to help health departments with these applications.
And the other thing that, you know, we can do is, in addition to our facilities and also the one in St. Louis, I'm sure Nancy Weaver and her colleagues would be happy as well, but we can also help you connect potentially with other folks in your own state who are in academic settings, not necessarily instead of working with one of us, but in addition. So, you know, we have our own networks and maybe can help you connect to people you may not be aware of.
And I see Jeremy's on.
Yeah, at this time we're not planning to apply because we are going to be applying for an AmeriCorps Vista worker, but definitely thinking about this for future opportunities. So we're looking at getting an AmeriCorps Vista starting in January potentially, and that's a 1-year commitment, and then after that we might consider that. And I think we might have one of these public health workers in our either HIV or WIC department might be currently within our state.
Well, Jeremy, I mean, you all, because you're already doing the AmeriCorps and you have other associates, I would reach out to that department and see if you could get their application, because this is a paid internship. So unlike the AmeriCorps piece, you don't have to pay for anything in terms of the stipend or fringe. And so it is, if you can go ahead and start at least looking at that and start seeing what they did and how it fits into your program, that might be a really ideal situation for you guys.
Yeah, and yeah, we might be able to look at it as an alternative, apply for both and see if we just get one of the opportunities. So
yeah. Any other, I'm trying to see if there's other people on.
Victoria, I see that you've unmuted yourself.
Oh, I didn't mean to unmute myself. I'm sorry.
So I have Victoria, Teresa, is that Peg?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
We haven't discussed this specifically related to injury. I know there's a PHAP over in the community health area, and I know she's doing a great job. We have applied in the past. We've just not ever had the good fortune to have a PHAP. We need to probably discuss it more, because I know it's a great opportunity.
And you all have a large university there, so I think we actually do. I'll check again, but I think we do get students from Nebraska typically applying, and so that would be a place where the match part would also then help out. But it's funny that you mentioned that the community groups do really well in this process, and so as we're thinking about our applications, making sure that your PHAP has the ability to get out into the community is going to make your application probably get through the process a little easier. The next big, I cannot overemphasize this part, the supervisory involvement. There's a section on the application, I'm trying to pull one up, that talks about the primary and secondary supervisor. And some people kind of, I call it softball it, just kind of put a few sentences in there. This is a huge part of it. They really do look to see that the associate has either direct contact or is at least meeting with the supervisor weekly, and has the ability to touch base with that person on a daily basis. So some people have made the mistake of choosing like here we have a presidential management fellow, and Grant, some people, while Grant, he does have access to Grant Baldwin, the division chief, that's not his primary supervisor. So we want that person that's directly in charge of that person to really have the ability to train that person in the day-to-day, answer questions, and really mentor this associate. So you should really think about the supervisory and the secondary as having significant amount of time in terms of this person's going to be working under you doing one of your tasks, whether it's leading the injury. Our number one application this last year for the injury center was someone leading all the adult falls work. And so we can talk a little bit about that, but they were the lead on the adult falls work. So it fell within the injury center work, but they were in charge of all of the activities around adult falls. And so having the infrastructure, having the ability for that associate, if they needed data analysis questions, having someone they could refer to, having all of that under that supervisory section of your application is going to be critical to improving your overall application. Alrighty. Oops, did I hit the wrong? My computer is not moving forward. Oh, did it go forward? All right. And so the training plan we've already kind of talked about. The big things are, one thing that people forget to put in is all of you have the regular trainings that every staff has to enter. Put those in your application. So because some of these are brand new. And so if you have ethics training that all state health employees have to do, put that in your application because those count as post-site orientation application. And then, of course, the technical training, the ICRCs, as we previously mentioned, would be great to have as part of that. And then public health and professional organizations, so Safe States, CSTE conferences, all of those things, if you have the funding to send them, that can be a part of your program, or other local public health and professional education programs, those are also count. And you can use a combination of both lecture, e-training, experiential learning training. All of those things work in terms of the application. And I just said that instructor-led, web-based, one-on-one, self-paced, or independent. I'm just gonna skip through those. And make sure that the goals align with what you're doing. So injury investigation, death and injury specific surveillance. Many of you have child fatality work that's going on. Many of you have adult falls that you don't have funding or can't fund a person, so that would be another place. PDO work, of course, falls in there. But remembering that there's positions chosen from violence and DUIP. So last year, DVP, Division of Violence Prevention, actually funded more positions. And so choose one that really you need someone to lead that work. It's not going to just be a team member on those. And finally, make sure the work plan is realistic. This person should not be writing they're not a supervisor, they're not a spokesperson, they're not considered an SME. And so make sure that they are, the work activities are progressive and have measurable deliverables. And we'll talk a little bit about that on our final slide. And make sure that it has a wide breadth of activities. And we've talked a little bit about that. So in the adult falls, they were in charge of course, the train the trainer work groups. They were in charge of the campaign. They were also in charge of meeting with health educators. And so that gave them a wide variety. But then they also had some data analysis as part of their application. So it really did cover the full work of adult falls. And so you can think of it in that way, and that one of those strategies that we use in either CORE or in the rape prevention grant, one of those major activities that you could assign someone, train them up, and let them lead the way on most of those activities. And finally, best practices. And so this is where my critique of what we see. So for each major activity, we see on average 8 to 9 of the domains are covered. So the list of domains that is on the earlier slide, each one of those major activities, then you should go through and be exhaustive. Like, I had one application that was like 10 pages long, and that was a failed application. One of the reasons is like they covered 2 of the domains. It's a tedious process, but making sure that each activity you list 2 of those domains that are covered, and on a minimum, at least 2 components from the 8 to 9 domains of the 9 domains is usually listed per major activity. In your application, the associate should be a lead on at least 2 activities, coordinator for at least 1, and team member 3 to 5, just depends on how many things you all are doing in your activity. That's a big one. Some applications we see, they're only a team member each time, and those are not ever make it to me or make it to the CIO review. Having the associate be the lead on 2 activities, coordinator for some, and team member for others is going to be a good balanced activity. Questions on anything so far? And as you're building your application, you can always send it to me. And the other big component of the application is in products. So you would build, they're going to be leading the PDO health campaign. Well, the end products are the things that they have to have at the end, whether it is a written paper, a presentation, an analysis of gap analysis. Those things are critical to your application. So making sure that they have really tangible products as end products for each activity is also really important. And finally, of course, the supervision and description and contact time is extremely important. Most of you have been in the game for a long time. Make sure you write your bio in a way that lets people know that you are an expert in your field and that you've been an expert in injury for a while, because that's a huge part of the application points. The supervisor, who the supervisor is a major component of the application. And I think these are the main sites. I've tried to put I think those click. Oh, I can go there. So those are the components. Here's the PHAP site and the host site application process. There are 2, the overview, the PHAP 101 and the strategic development. These are the webinars. And then they give you the CDC official language and talks through most of the material that we went over today, but it gives you the PHAP kind of overarching language. And that hopefully will, so I would highly recommend going through those 2 just to get a full understanding of the PHAP model and what they're looking for. And then if you have questions as you're building application, you can always reach me. And that is, I think, all. That was not too bad. In terms
that was great. Thank you, Jamie.
I try to keep it short, but allow time for questions. If there are any, I'm glad to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Awesome. Well, I hope to see applications this time. The big last again, the last point is that you cannot do, many of you did, you would do intimate partner violence and child abuse and neglect. And so I know that in our core, we have this kind of shared risk and protective factor model, and that is actually, unfortunately, we've not been able to convince them that that is okay. And so it has to be a very topic specific in terms of as you build your education and training program for the host site.
That's useful clarification. Jamie, can we share some of these resources on our the Plains to Peak Regional Network website?
Of course, and hopefully many of the slides that I provided are just cobbled from the other two slides, but they actually here, as you can still see my screen, this PowerPoint it is a full webinar from the PHAP program. So it this first one is just a kind of general overview. The CoStar model does go into more specifics, but they use a lot of HIV and TB and infectious disease examples, which I didn't find helpful. And so that's why I tried to tweak them so that it made more sense to you guys.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Last call for questions. And I just want to. It's lunchtime here. Nice. And I just want to thank Carol and Corey for speaking up and offering up some of your services and collaboration for the states in this region. That would be really great. So if there's not any more questions, I will share this information via our blog site. And as Jamie said, feel free to reach out. And if you want to do that through me or directly to him, I'm sure that'll be okay. And otherwise, hopefully we will be seeing a lot of you at Safe States.
Not me.
Oh.
I can't. The week of shared risk and protective factors. So one of us has to stay. It'll be me.
Oh, of course. Well, great. Thank you again, Jamie, so much for sharing this information. This is really helpful. And even if states are in our region aren't applying this year, hopefully we can do something in years to come and continue this collaborative effort.
All right. Well, thank you guys. You all have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.